Can you come so we can go? Andrew asks softly. Adana doesn't move. The evening sun paints the small compound gold. A quiet street in Port Harcourt hums with distant traffic and the smell of roasted fish from a roadside stand. A navy blue kaftan man leans on a shining Bentley parked by the gate, red cap neat, smile gentle. He tilts his head at Adana like she is the only person in the world. The man asks, "Who is he to you?" Adana's eyes flick from the kaftan to Andrew's worn t-shirt. She lifts her chin, smooths a wrinkle on her dress, and says the words that split the air. "Ignore his talk, he's my janitor." Andrew blinks once, then twice. The Bentley's door clicks open. Adana slides into the front seat like she has just sat on her future, legs crossed, handbag on her lap, a tiny smile hiding in the corner of her mouth. Andrew steps forward, hands shaking but calm on the outside. He taps the Bentley window. The man in the red cap looks up at him. The smile still there, but his eyes deep, like he knows something no one else does. He presses a button. The window lowers with a soft whir. "Good evening," Andrew says. The man turns to Adana. "Step down for a moment. Let's clear something first." Adana huffs, opens the door, and faces Andrew with fire in her voice. "Why are you blocking my chance? Don't rub your poverty on me. I have made a choice." The man in the red cap watches them both, quiet. He turns back to Andrew. "Good evening, sir." 7 days earlier, Andrew Johnson in his Lagos study, lights low, city skyline blinking through the glass. He was 35, a billionaire CEO, and the leader of Tech, the company that built learning apps for kids in rural towns across Africa. But none of that could warm the cold place in his chest. Love. He had failed there. Juliet had been the last blow. She ran 2 days to their wedding. She withdrew $500,000 from his company account she had access to. She left with his Rolls-Royce too. That night, Andrew stopped believing that anyone could see him without the shine of his money. He called Jonathan, the manager of Tech's new Port Harcourt branch. Only Jonathan knew his true face there. Everyone else would see a stranger. "I'm coming down," Andrew said. "No sirens, no noise. I'll be a junior staff. If love is real, it will find me in ordinary clothes." 2 days later, the private jet cut through clouds to Port Harcourt. An old sedan waited on the tarmac. He drove himself to the outskirts, to a small one-bedroom apartment with a stubborn door and a humming fridge. He unpacked a small bag, plain shirts, worn jeans, nothing that sparkled. At dawn, he walked into Tech Port Harcourt, wearing a faded t-shirt and scuffed shoes. Some people looked at him with quick, sharp eyes. A few laughed under their breath. He carried files. He ran small errands. He kept his head down and his ears open. He greeted everyone with the same soft, "Good morning," like a habit he refused to lose. On the 7th day, he met Adana. She sat at a desk with 2 monitors and a simple necklace. Her hair was packed neatly, her face open and careful at the same time. She was a data analyst, fast fingers, steady eyes. She explained numbers like stories. She laughed with her whole face when the data made sense. She said, "Thank you," when he brought her printouts. She asked his name and did not forget it. They ate jollof rice in the canteen, same table, different plates. She told him she had walked through heartbreak too. People had called her not enough, not shiny, not their class. She had cried in rooms where nobody saw, then wiped her face and kept going. Andrew listened. He wanted to believe, but the old pain sat beside him like a guard. That night he stood outside his small apartment and called Jonathan. "Help me test her heart," he said. "One last time. If she is true, I will tell her everything." Jonathan understood. A plan began to move quiet and smooth. The next evening, Andrew invited Adana to see where he lived. She came. She stood in the doorway, eyes moving from the cracked paint to the tiny kitchen. A shadow crossed her face, fast as a cloud over sun. She forced a smile. "It's fine," she said, voice thin. They stepped outside to the compound. That was when the Bentley rolled to a stop, like a song ending on a soft note. The man in navy blue kaftan waved, gentle smile, red cap bright. He spoke to Adana like he already knew her heart. He called himself Nelson. Things changed in seconds. The way Adana's eyes lit up, the way she turned her body toward the car, the way hope rushed into her face like light through an open door. "Who is he to you?" Nelson asked, nodding at Andrew. Adana did not look at Andrew when she answered. Ignore his talk. He's my janitor. The words fell like a glass cup on tile. Andrew felt something crack inside him, but he did not raise his voice. He walked to the Bentley, steady. Like each step was a choice. He greeted Nelson with a small nod. Nelson looked up at him, and the smile on his face shifted respect, showing through like gold under dust. Step down first, Nelson told Adana. Let's sort this out. Adana stepped down, angry and loud, cutting the evening with her words. Why do you want to block my future? Why should I lose a rich man because of you? The compound held its breath. Nelson turned to Andrew, eyes calm, voice low. Good evening, sir. The word sir hung between them like a bell that had just been struck. Adana froze when she heard Nelson's voice, calm, sure, respectful, calling, Andrew, sir. Her brows knitted together. She turned sharply, eyes darting between the two men. Wait, what do you mean, sir? He's nobody. Just a junior staff, a file carrier. He lives in a one-room house, for heaven's sake. Andrew didn't answer. His silence was heavy, cutting deeper than words. The air itself seemed to shift. Nelson sighed, leaned back against the Bentley, and folded his arms. Adana, he said gently. Do you know who this man is? Adana scoffed, her voice sharp. Yes, he's Andrew, a low-level worker in our office. I know what I saw inside that tiny apartment. He is not my future. Please, stop making this sound bigger than it is. Nelson shook his head slowly, like a teacher watching a student fail the simplest test. No, Adana, the truth is the opposite of everything you just said. Andrew raised his head finally. His eyes steady, wounded, unblinking, met hers. I gave you my trust, he whispered. And in a heartbeat, you threw me away. Her lips trembled, but pride pushed her words out. What do you want me to do? Pretend I don't want a better life? You have nothing, Andrew. Look at him. Look at his car. His confidence. That's the kind of man I should be with. You should understand that. Nelson's expression hardened. That car you admire? It isn't mine. That confidence? It isn't built on my own foundation. I am only a shadow in a plan bigger than me. Adana blinked. What are you saying? Nelson's voice dropped lower, more deliberate. This Bentley belongs to Andrew. That house you saw is a disguise. This man standing here is not a janitor, not a junior staff. He is Andrew Johnson, the CEO of Anditech, the very company you work for, a billionaire. The one you thought too small for your dreams. The words struck like thunder. Adana's bag slipped from her hand and fell to the ground. Her knees felt weak. What are you talking about? She whispered, shaking her head. That's impossible. He dresses like he... Andrew finally spoke, his voice calm but sharp enough to cut. Yes, Adana. I am Andrew Johnson. I came here not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, but as a man looking for someone who could love me without the weight of my money. I wanted to know if there was a heart strong enough to choose me over glitter. Adana's breath came in short gasps. Her face flushed hot, then pale. She looked at Nelson, begging his eyes to deny it, to tell her it was a cruel prank. But Nelson nodded once, slowly. It's true, he said. The silence that followed was louder than her earlier insults. A dog barked faintly in the distance. The Bentley engine hummed. Then Adana's body collapsed forward. She dropped to her knees on the dusty ground and clutched at Andrew's trousers. Tears burst from her eyes as though a dam had cracked open. Andrew, please, she begged. I didn't know. I thought, oh God, I thought you were ordinary. I was blinded. Forgive me. Please, don't let this mistake define me. I can change. I swear I can change. Her cries were loud, raw, drawing curious stares from neighbors across the fence. Andrew's chest tightened at the sight. He had loved this woman. He had hoped she would prove different. Now, seeing her on the ground, begging with trembling hands, the pain pressed heavier. Adana, Andrew said slowly, pulling his leg free. If I had told you I was a billionaire from the start, would you have stayed? Or would you have only loved the title, the money, the power? She shook her head violently. No, no. I swear it's not like that. I was weak. I wanted to escape my pain, my disappointments. I thought wealth was my rescue. But you are my rescue, Andrew. Please, just one more chance. Nelson stepped forward, his eyes firm. Adana, you don't understand what you've lost. This was his final test. the chance for you to prove your heart was real, and in less than 1 minute, you traded it away." Adana wailed, her voice breaking. "Please, I'm not that woman." I panicked. I let greed speak for me. "Andrew, look into my eyes, I beg you." Andrew's face hardened. He turned away, walked back into the small apartment, and moments later came out with a leather bag. Without another word, he opened the Bentley's back door and slid inside. Nelson followed. The driver started the engine. Adana's hand slammed on the window as the car rolled forward. "Please, Andrew, don't leave me like this. Don't let this be the end." But the Bentley pulled away, its red taillights glowing against the dusk. Adana fell to the ground, dust clinging to her knees, her cries echoing into the night. Inside the car, Andrew's jaw was tight, his fists clenched on his lap. His mind spun with anger, betrayal, and grief. But above it all, one truth pressed heavier than the rest. Love, it seemed, did not exist for men like him. He stared out of the window as the city lights of Port Harcourt blurred by, a single thought whispering inside him. Maybe I was never meant to be loved at all. And yet, deep inside his chest, a voice he tried to silence whispered something else, something more dangerous than anger. What if she really could change? Adana did not sleep that night. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment, the fan spinning lazily above her. Every second replayed the scene in her head, her words, her tone, the coldness in Andrew's eyes as he stepped into the Bentley. "Ignore his talk. He's my janitor." The words haunted her like a curse. They rang in her ears until she pressed her pillow over her head, hoping to silence them. But they would not go away. By dawn, her eyes were swollen from crying. She did not have the courage to step into the Undertech office. How could she face her colleagues, knowing the man she insulted, the man she trampled on, was not just a junior staff, but the CEO, the owner of it all? Her hands trembled as she typed a resignation email, short and weak. "I am sorry, but I can't continue. Please accept this as my resignation." When she pressed send, tears blurred her vision again. Meanwhile, back in Lagos, Andrew sat in his mansion study. The wide room, with its polished floors and glass shelves, felt colder than usual. He had returned on his private jet that morning, shutting out the world, refusing to talk to anyone except Jonathan. Love had failed him once more. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. Juliet's betrayal still cut deep. Now Adana had added a fresh wound. He felt cursed in matters of the heart. Maybe money had poisoned his chances of finding genuine love. When Jonathan came in later that evening, holding his phone, Andrew hardly lifted his eyes. "Sir," Jonathan said carefully. She sent another message. Andrew frowned. "Delete it. I don't want to read anything from her." But Jonathan didn't delete it. Instead, he placed the phone on the desk. "I think you should read this one." Reluctantly, Andrew glanced at the screen. The message was long, written in a trembling flow of words. "Since I made that terrible mistake, I have not been myself. I now truly understand the consequences of greed and how wrong I was to leave you within minutes for a stranger I felt was better off. Please, I seek your forgiveness, even if you won't take me back. Forgive me so I can at least breathe again. The guilt is killing me every day." Andrew stared at the words. Something in them felt different, less like manipulation, more like broken honesty. His chest tightened. He pushed the phone away, but the words stayed, scratching at his mind. For Adana, life became a storm of regret. Days passed, yet she never stepped back into the Undertech office. She knew whispers would follow her, mocking her for throwing away the one man every woman in the city dreamed of. She deleted her social media accounts, blocked curious friends, and stayed indoors. Her phone the only place where her heart could reach him. Every evening she typed long apologies and sent them to Jonathan, hoping he would pass them along. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. But one evening, as rain tapped gently on her window, she sat on her bed and wrote words from the deepest part of her shame. "Andrew, I am not asking for marriage. I am not asking for wealth. I am only asking for forgiveness. Forgive me so I can forgive myself. Please." When Jonathan read it, he carried it straight to Andrew without a second thought. Andrew sat alone on the balcony of his mansion, the city lights twinkling below. He read her message again and again. His anger was still raw, but something inside him softened. Wasn't he too guilty of weakness? He had trusted Juliet too quickly. He had doubted Adana too much. And now, after all her begging, was he going to prove that his heart had no room for forgiveness? He picked up his phone. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then, slowly, he dialed her number. On the other side of the city, Adana was sitting in darkness, hugging her knees, when her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and nearly dropped it. Andrew calling. Her breath caught. She pressed accept with trembling hands. Hello? Her voice was barely a whisper. Adana? Andrew's voice was low, steady. If you are truly sorry, if you are ready to start fresh on a clean slate, then come to Lagos tomorrow. I have already booked a flight for you. The ticket will be at the airport counter under your name. Adana's tears flowed again, but this time they were tears of relief. Yes, Andrew, I will come. I promise you, I will be there. Good, Andrew said quietly. Then we will talk. The line ended. The next morning, Adana packed a small bag with shaking hands. She wore a simple dress, tied her hair back, and boarded the flight to Lagos. Every heartbeat reminded her of the chance she had been given, a chance she did not deserve, but one she would never throw away again. When she arrived at Andrew's mansion in Lekki, her legs almost gave way. The gates alone were taller than any building on her street. Guards opened them respectfully, and she walked in slowly, her eyes wide at the marble floors, glittering chandeliers, and the fountain at the entrance. Andrew stood in the doorway, his tall frame dressed in a simple white shirt. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Adana dropped her bag and fell to her knees again, her voice breaking. I am sorry, Andrew. I was blind. Please forgive me. Andrew's eyes softened, though his jaw remained tight. Slowly, he walked to her and lifted her by the shoulders. He looked at her face, red eyes, trembling lips, broken pride, and for the first time since the betrayal, he allowed himself to breathe. Adana, he said softly, everyone deserves a second chance. Even the best people can fall when temptation comes. What matters is the heart to admit and change. She sobbed harder, nodding. Andrew wrapped his arms around her and pulled her close. For the first time in weeks, he felt something heal inside him. But deep within, a question still lingered. Could love survive after betrayal? Or was this just the beginning of another test? The night breeze carried a faint scent of the sea as Adana stood on the balcony of Andrew's mansion in Lekki. The city lights of Lagos stretched out in the distance, flickering like restless stars. She had been in this house for only a few hours, yet every corner of it made her feel both overwhelmed and unworthy. Andrew sat opposite her in a simple chair, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He held a glass of water, his gaze steady on her. Between them, silence pressed heavily, broken only by the hum of the night. Finally, Andrew spoke. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. Adana, you must understand. This is not easy for me. My past is full of betrayals. Juliet taught me that trust can vanish in one heartbeat. And then you... He paused, his lips tightening. You cut deeper than I expected. Adana bowed her head, tears stinging her eyes again. I know, Andrew. I hurt you. I hurt myself too. I thought I wanted wealth. But the truth is, I was afraid of suffering again. Afraid of being mocked for choosing someone who looked like he had nothing. I didn't know who you were. But that doesn't excuse me. Andrew studied her, searching for the smallest hint of insincerity. All he saw was trembling honesty. He leaned back in his chair. You said you're ready for a clean slate. But tell me, why should I believe you won't fail me again when another temptation comes knocking? Adana wiped her face, forcing herself to meet his eyes. Because I know the taste of regret now. I carry it every second, Andrew. It's heavier than any poverty I ever feared. You gave me a chance to prove love, and I failed. I can't undo that. But I can build something better with you, if you'll let me. Andrew's chest tightened. He wanted to believe her. Part of him longed to let her words melt the walls he had built, but another part of him, wounded and cautious, reminded him of the Bentley scene, of her quick denial. He stood and walked to the railing, gazing out into the night. Adana, love is not just about words, it's about choices. Every day, every moment. You'll have to show me with your life, not just your mouth. She nodded eagerly. I will, Andrew. I'll show you, even if it takes years. The following morning, Andrew arranged a private wing in the mansion for Adana. It was luxurious polished marble floors, tall glass windows, a room filled with soft furniture, and a balcony overlooking the gardens. But Adana felt no joy as she entered it. To her, It was not a prize, but a responsibility. Every pillow, every chandelier seemed to whisper, "Don't fail him again." Over breakfast, Andrew tested her. "Adana," he said, sipping tea, "you will not live here like a guest. I want you to be part of Anditech headquarters. You'll resume as lead data analyst, under direct supervision. There will be eyes on you, eyes waiting for you to falter. Can you handle that pressure?" She swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, Andrew, I will not disappoint you again." He studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "We'll see." At Anditech Lagos, her return shocked many employees. Whispers followed her through the halls. "Isn't that the girl from Port Harcourt? They said she called the CEO a janitor. She's finished. But why is she here?" Adana kept her head low and focused on her work. She poured herself into data reports, staying late at night, checking every figure twice. She avoided gossip, avoided pride. Even when a few arrogant staff members mocked her behind her back, she forced herself to stay calm. Andrew watched from a distance. Through department reports, he saw her effort. Through Jonathan's eyes, he heard of her humility. Slowly, a spark of respect began to grow again. One evening, they sat on the same balcony as before. The city was alive with horns and lights, but here it was calm. Andrew leaned on the railing, silent for a long time before speaking. "You've been different these past weeks," he said quietly. "I see your effort, but effort is not love. Tell me, Adana, what do you really want? Me, or what comes with me?" Adana's eyes glistened. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "I want you, Andrew. If you strip away the wealth, the cars, the mansion, I will still want you. Because I learned something after you left me in Port Harcourt. Wealth cannot cover the shame of betrayal, but love, true love, can cover scars." For the first time, Andrew's lips curved into the faintest smile. He reached out, brushing away a tear from her cheek. "Do you know how many women have spoken those same words to me?" Her heart skipped. "How many?" "Too many. And every one of them left when reality tested their promise." He let his hand fall. "I pray you are not another name on that list." Adana grabbed his hand quickly, holding it tightly. "Test me again, Andrew. Test me 100 times. I will not fail you again." He searched her eyes. This time, something in her gaze looked different, not the hunger for riches, but the desperation of a woman who had tasted regret and never wanted to taste it again. The next morning, Andrew made a decision. He invited her to join him on a trip, an important contract negotiation in Abuja. For him, it was business. For her, it would be another test. Could she handle the whispers, the attention, the weight of walking beside a man the whole world wanted? On the flight to Abuja, Adana sat beside him quietly, her hands clasped on her lap. She wore a simple gown, no flashy jewelry, no makeup beyond the basics. Other business elites in the jet whispered among themselves, wondering who she was. She ignored them. At the hotel, she carried herself with humility, never demanding attention, never basking in Andrew's status. In the meeting room, when Andrew asked her to present data, she stood tall, her voice steady, her analysis sharp. She impressed not only Andrew, but also the foreign investors. That evening, as they returned to their suite, Andrew watched her with quiet wonder. This was not the same woman who once chose a Bentley over his heart. This was someone different, refined by regret, humbled by failure, determined to rise again. Yet, as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, doubt still whispered in his heart. Can people really change? Or is this just another mask waiting to fall? By morning, Andrew stood on the balcony of the Abuja hotel, the city still waking below. He sipped his coffee, lost in thought. Behind him, Adana stepped out quietly, her voice soft. "Andrew, thank you for giving me this chance." He turned, his eyes searching hers. "Adana, this is not just a chance. This is a test that may decide everything between us." She nodded firmly. "Then let me prove myself. Not with words, with actions." Andrew stared at her, the faint sunrise painting her face in warm light. For the first time, he wondered if destiny had brought her back to him, not to break him, but to heal him. Still, he knew one truth. The final test had not yet come. The Abuja trip was a success. Contracts were signed, investors left impressed, and Andrew's company gained another step in its expansion across Africa. But for Andrew, the real victory wasn't on paper. It was watching Adana. She carried herself with humility, spoke with intelligence, and never once tried to flaunt his name for attention. And yet, doubts lingered. On their flight back to Lagos, Andrew sat quietly, staring out the window. Adana noticed his silence and placed her hand gently on his. "Are you still doubting me?" she asked softly. Andrew turned his head. His eyes searched hers like a man looking for hidden cracks. "Adana, doubt is all I've known when it comes to love. Every time I trusted, I was betrayed. Juliet took my heart and my money. And you," he exhaled sharply, "you broke me in the simplest but deepest way. I don't know if my heart can take another failure." Adana's grip tightened. "Then let me be the one to prove to you that trust still exists. I will not run again. I will not trade you for anything. Test me, Andrew, please. One last time." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. Back in Lagos, Andrew decided to do exactly that, set one final test. If Adana passed, he would give her not just forgiveness, but his whole life. The following week, he invited her to a high-profile business dinner at one of Lagos's most luxurious hotels. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, golden chairs, and wealthy elites dressed in dazzling outfits. Every guest there was someone with power: governors, CEOs, foreign investors. Andrew entered with Adana by his side. She wore a simple but elegant gown. He had chosen for her a navy blue dress, with no excessive jewelry. Just a touch of grace. Heads turned as they walked in together, whispers floating across the room. "Who is she? Isn't that the girl who? How bold, bringing her here." Adana heard it all, but she kept her chin up, refusing to let shame define her. She focused only on Andrew. At the far end of the hall, a woman appeared, tall, striking, dripping in diamonds. It was Juliet, the woman who had once abandoned Andrew and disappeared with his wealth. She smirked when her eyes landed on him, then sauntered over with calculated grace. "Well, well," Juliet said, her voice sweet but sharp. "Andrew Johnson, still charming as ever. And who is this?" She let her eyes sweep over Adana with deliberate disdain. Adana stiffened, but Andrew said nothing. He wanted to see what she would do. Juliet leaned closer to Adana, her lips curling. "Sweetheart, you have no idea the kind of man you're with. He is rich, yes, but his world is dangerous, full of temptations. Are you sure you're not just another passing shadow?" Adana's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. "I am not a shadow. I am here because I choose him, not his money, and I don't need your approval to love him." Juliet's smile faded, her eyes narrowing. She turned back to Andrew, her voice dripping with mockery. "You're really testing limits, Andrew. But we'll see how long she lasts." With a final smirk, she walked away. Andrew's chest warmed. For the first time, Adana had not wavered in the face of wealth and intimidation. But the night was not over. Later, as Andrew stepped aside to speak with a group of investors, another wealthy man approached Adana. He was tall, smooth-spoken, dressed in a glittering white agbada. He introduced himself as Chief Dare, one of Lagos's most influential oil magnates. "You are far too beautiful to be standing alone," he said with a charming smile. "Why waste your youth on a man who has been broken too many times? Come with me instead. I can give you more than he ever could: power, riches, a life without scars." It was the ultimate test. Every word was bait. Every offer was designed to see if Adana had truly changed. Adana's chest tightened. For a second, old fears tried to whisper, "This is your chance at security. This is what you always dreamed of." But then, she remembered Andrew's eyes that night in Port Harcourt, the look of a man betrayed, standing frozen while she walked away. She remembered her nights of regret, her days of shame, and the forgiveness she had begged for. She would not betray him again. She lifted her chin and looked Chief Dare straight in the eye. "No," she said firmly. "I am with Andrew. I don't want your money, your power, or your promises. He is my choice, and nothing you say will change that." The hall seemed to hush at her words. Chief Dare chuckled, surprised by her boldness, and stepped back. "Strong woman," he said with a nod before walking away. Andrew had seen it all. He had been watching from a distance. His heart swelled as relief washed over him. This time, she had chosen him without hesitation. Later that night, as the dinner ended, Andrew led Adana to the balcony of the hotel. The Lagos skyline glittered below, the sound of traffic faint in the distance. He turned to her, his voice low. "Adana, tonight I saw something different in you. You were tested twice, and you stood firm. For the first time, I believe your words are true. Tears filled her eyes. Andrew, he took her hand, his own trembling slightly. I have searched for love my whole life. I have been broken, disappointed, betrayed. But you, despite your mistakes, have shown me that even the broken can rise again. We are not perfect, Adana. But maybe, together, we can be enough. Then, to her shock, Andrew dropped to one knee. From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a diamond ring that sparkled under the city lights. Adana, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Will you marry me and walk this journey with me, not as a woman chasing wealth, but as a woman willing to build love on truth? Adana gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks as she nodded again and again. Yes, Andrew. Yes, I will marry you. He slid the ring onto her finger, and she collapsed into his arms, sobbing into his chest. For the first time, her tears were not of regret, but of joy. 2 months later, their wedding filled Lagos with awe. It was grand, attended by leaders, celebrities, and dignitaries. But at the heart of it all was something no money could buy. 2 imperfect souls, choosing each other despite scars. 3 years down the line, as Andrew held their newborn son, Sam, in his arms, he whispered with tears in his eyes, I thought love didn't exist. But you, Adana, you proved me wrong. Adana leaned against him, smiling through her tears. And you proved to me that forgiveness can build the strongest love. The boy stirred in his arms, and Andrew kissed his forehead. You will grow to know, Sam, he whispered, that humility and a heart of forgiveness wins it all. And in that moment, the wounds of betrayal healed into a story of redemption. What is your view about this story? If you were in Andrew's shoes, would you have forgiven Adana and take her back? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.